Hi everyone, it's Nisha Zachary. Thank you for joining me for Permission to Leap. Today I have with us Monique Alvarez. Monique is the owner of Monique Alvarez Enterprises and celebrates big thinkers, serious doers, wild adventurers, and rad entrepreneurs. She started traveling at 19 and has traveled to 17 countries solo, married, and now with her family. Her life is an ongoing adventure, and she works from wherever she is. She is on a mission to share her love of the world with the world. Hi, Monique.
Hi, Nisha. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you being here and taking the time to talk to me.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. As you said, I started traveling at 19 and I got bit by the bug. And so I traveled pretty much until I was 28 years old. And then I went back to the States. And that's when I met my husband on a blind date, and we started our life together. And then we went off and traveled for a year together. And then we came back and had a couple kids. And now we're out traveling again.
So how did you decide that now was the time to travel?
The way I decided is actually the moment I found out I was pregnant with my first son, Sam, I knew I had to figure out a plan to travel because truthfully, I never wanted to become a mother until I saw how family was done in Europe. When I lived in Albania and I traveled throughout Europe, I saw how the family structure was. I saw how children were treated. I saw how elders were treated. And that was the first seed that was planted. But I never wanted to have kids if it meant sort of living the traditional regular American life. So when I got pregnant with Sam, he inspired it. But when I really knew it was time was last year about this time. I was getting ready to have my birthday, and my boys were getting ready to turn 1 and 2. And I thought, okay, we don't have infants anymore. They're old enough. Let's make the plans and move that direction.
Okay. So what's the difference, I'm just curious, between the way children are treated there and over here in America?
You know, what I notice in the States is that whether we say it directly or not, we really feel like children should be seen and not heard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we try to separate our kids. Like I see, observing that we have work. And then when we work, we put the kids over here in this building or with that person. And when we go out to eat, we go out to eat. The adults go out to eat, but the kids, they're going to stay back with somebody. When we go on vacation, we leave the kids with somebody else. And I see how we're just constantly trying to separate. We do the same thing with, older people.
Right.
We set them off and we put them in nursing homes. You go live over there and we're going to keep doing our thing. And they absolutely never do that in Europe. I mean, the parents, they live with the oldest sibling until the day they die. Children go along for everything. They go out to eat, they go on family walks, they go on vacation. And it's also not this thing where they try to make children act like adults. Like if you're out at a restaurant in Europe or Mexico, nobody is, sort of giving the parents that eye or that eye roll when the kids are loud or, throwing a toy, food's flying. They simply say, that's kids. They're just
Right.
kids acting like kids. And so I think that takes the pressure off of parents because everybody sort of jumps in and offers a candy, offers a toy, and just sort of engages so that the whole atmosphere relaxes and mainly the parents, they can relax and go, you know what, they're kids. That's what they're going to do.
Right. Oh, I like that. I know that you're very right as far as the separation. I know my mom made a point to me when we were talking a few days ago that, when we were growing up, we went everywhere with them. There was their anniversary dinner. If they were going on vacation, we were everywhere. But most people don't do that. Most people do separate. So that's why I enjoy being a stay-at-home mom and an entrepreneur. It's because I can stay home with my kids. And yeah, I do send them to daycare 2 hours a day, but it's for them to get socialization with other children, not because, that's where they're supposed to be. Does that make sense?
Exactly. And I feel the same way. I personally didn't take on motherhood to ask somebody else to raise my kids.
Right.
We have a team. And even right now, like the boys, they're playing with the nanny and they're with her 12 to 14 hours a week. But I'm not asking her to take my kids 8 to 12 hours a day and say, you know what, now they're your responsibility, because I've got my life to live.
Right. So let me ask you this. What is your definition of permission?
Permission is really being able to look at all of the options and all of the challenges and all of the pieces, right? All of the various things that could or couldn't happen, and deciding to say yes anyway. That's permission to me.
I love that. Okay, I just read a quote that you put up on Facebook. It's talking about overwhelm and how you don't buy it. So
Right.
can you explain that? Because I loved it.
Sure. So oftentimes people tell me, because anyone who's ever worked with me, I expect a lot out of my clients.
Yeah.
Right? You know this. I believe that people don't pay me so I can let them off the hook. They can do that all by themselves.
Right.
So people often come to me and say, you're asking too much of me, or I'm overwhelmed with all the stuff I have to do. And I say, I don't buy it. You're not overwhelmed by what you need to do and want to do and have to do. You're overwhelmed because you aren't doing anything, right? You're focusing on the things you don't have control over. You're in your head. I think in your head is where you get overwhelmed.
Exactly.
I never get overwhelmed in action. I never do.
But
if I'm sitting in bed, like thinking about it, and then all of a sudden it's way bigger than I can handle, that's where overwhelm comes from.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so you say that there's a myth that moms can't travel. And I bring this up because I know a lot of times just the thought of traveling with my kids, because like you, I've got, a 2 and a 3-year-old, and I've got my older one too, who's 15. But the idea of traveling with them, sometimes it's like, oh my gosh. So if you don't buy overwhelm and you're giving yourself permission, how do you travel with children?
Well, I want to be the first to say this. Like, of course, I think I have the greatest kids in the world. They're like the cutest little things I've ever seen, but they are ornery, okay? I was not given these like sweet and quiet little boys, okay? I mean, they're full bore all day. I wonder where they get it from, right?
Right.
So I want to say that first off, because I don't want people to think, well, her kids are, they're different than mine. Like mine will just like be tearing this place up, right? No, mine do. The decision comes, and how I'm able to balance all of that is to be able to say, we're traveling, we're going to go do this, and we're just going to put the pieces together, and I'm just going to let it unfold. I'm not going to be concerned if my kids are going to cry on the plane, if they're going to be loud, if they're going to sleep. I think trying to control too many things is what makes moms go, forget it, because they're worried about what everybody else is going to think. I just say, like, we just did this 19-day trip. We first took a 5-hour bus ride to Mexico City, right? And my husband was like, do you think that's a good idea, like to start off this trip with a 5-hour bus ride? He goes, it's going to be full of people. And I said, listen, if we're relaxed and we're having fun and we get them excited and say, boys, we're going to go on the bus and we've got snacks, and just relax in and of ourselves, then they are going to pick up on that. That was the biggest thing I learned as a mother, is my kids, they model me and they mirror back. When I'm wound up, guess what? They're wound up. When I'm relaxed, no more go with the flow, And guess what? They did amazing on that bus ride. Nobody even knew that they were on there. We had snacks, they played, and after they sort of, got to observe every new thing and look at the cars out the window, they went to sleep for 3 solid hours. So it was like, even when we got there, Derek was like, wow, that was easier than I thought. So I think moms, if they begin to think of like all of the stuff that could go wrong, and you have to literally just take it one step at a time.
That makes sense. So what are some common misconceptions that you think are wrapped around women and traveling?
I think a lot of women believe that it's okay to travel when you're young, or when you're ready to retire, right? So if you're in like your wild 20s, go for it. Or if you're like 60s, 70s, you've earned it. And if you're somewhere in the middle, you're screwed, right?
Yeah.
If you're somewhere in the middle, then it's time for you to grow up and be an adult, be responsible, do the right thing, get that good job, get a career, get married, have kids, have the house, have a clean house,
right?
Have the well-behaved kids. And it's like, that's the world that you are told, like, you must participate in. Like,
exactly.
Get in and get your act together And don't be that one person in the family where everybody goes, oh my God, what was she thinking, you know?
Yeah, that person that's still trying to find themselves.
Exactly. So I think that really people just, you know, the misconception is that if you try to do it in that middle stage, you're probably irresponsible, and you probably just, you're not really successful, and you're a little bit of a weirdo, you know?
You know, you're exactly right. People do kind of look at you with a sideways glance like, you want to do what?
Exactly.
So how did you give yourself permission to say, you know, forget what everybody else is saying. This is what we're going to do. I mean, obviously your husband agreed with it. So, you know, you had that support, but what about the rest of the world?
You know, I had a little quote unquote help from my body. I'm a person who living in I can go as hard and as fast as anyone, but living in the US is really hard on my body. I physically break down often in the United States because it's a pace that's physically hard to keep up with, right? And over Easter weekend, we took a staycation, and I totally unplugged from everything. I turned my phone off. I wasn't on the computer. And we went to a resort, and I was trying to put together the pieces of the actual days and times and everything, the specifics of when we were going to leave to come to Mexico. And right after that weekend, I had a relapse in malaria. I got malaria in Africa, like, I don't know, 12 years ago. And I hadn't had a relapse in like a long time, like 9 years. And when I relapsed, that was my sign. You know, everyone's looking for a sign. Well, that was my sign that I no longer really had a choice. I had to come clean on who I am, and I had to make the decision to go. And I had two groups of people that it was the hardest to really announce to. My family knew I traveled, right? They had watched me travel. But I think in their minds, it had always been like, this is a temporary state, right? She's going to go and she's going to come, and she goes again, and maybe we can get her to come back faster, this sort of back and forth. And I knew once and for all, I had to announce to my family that this is who I am. This is the lifestyle I want.
Right.
Which is different, right? And then my clients were a big one. Derek and I had a local business since 2008. And I had a couple of mastermind groups in Tucson where we were living. I had a whole bunch of clients there. I had some clients in various other states. And what I learned about having a local business is that local business owners really want someone who's local. They want someone who's in the same country, who they feel like if they need to get a hold of them, they can call or text or email. And there's just like this mental block with someone going to another country, even though I literally have my same phone number. I'm still with AT&T. They can still contact me the same way. It's a discomfort. It's this like, no, all of a sudden it feels different, right? And so I knew I just had to tell them, and I had to be okay with whatever business I lost. That was at the place I was, as I had honestly got to the place where I wasn't going to beg anyone to support me. Either they were or they weren't.
I gotcha. And you weren't tied to the outcome of whatever their decision was.
I wasn't. I had to release myself of that because it was just too hard otherwise. And it would just keep postponing what I wanted.
Right. Okay. So I know you said like you had a relapse of malaria, but before that, what was your pivot point that said, I have to get out of this country. I have to travel?
It was on my 38th birthday. I love birthdays. I'm like one of those people who just loves birthdays. And every birthday I evaluate where I am and where I want to be. And I had a lot of wonderful pieces of my ideal life in place.
Right.
But the one big glaring missing piece was that I hadn't been out of the country for a long time. I hadn't been out of the country since 2012. And it was literally like I was just starving. You know, I had to find a way to incorporate that. And that's when I just said, I'm going to make this happen. And really, I didn't include anyone in my plans at that point. Nobody. I just made the decision within myself that everything I do from this point forward is going to take me in that direction. And that's often what I tell people is, like, if you know you want to go to San Diego, then you got to get on the highway that goes to San Diego, right?
Right.
And that's what I did within myself. It's like, I want to get out of the country. I had in my mind that Mexico would be a good first step, but I just made sure that everything lined up with that. You know, every single thing I was doing, because it's easy when you're living in the U.S. to get caught up in the U.S. stuff, right? Buying stuff, whether it's for the house or clothes or this or that. And I wanted to make sure that I was directing as much of my money as possible toward this decision.
Oh, I like that. So was that your first step that you took, was like directing your money, or was there a step before that?
Directing my money and also directing my business. I had started a mastermind about 6 months prior, and what I decided at that point was that I was going to add a second group, and that I was going to then look into doing a virtual group through Zoom. I had one participant who had jumped on board and joined like a local one, and she was the only one coming in through Zoom. And I knew that she was like the seed for that, right? So then I knew I had to take that mastermind idea, but put it on a virtual platform.
Wow. Talk about thinking outside the box.
Yes. And I knew that, you know, my whole business had been around internet stuff like websites and social media and all this,
Right.
but I personally hadn't used the internet to interact with clients. I had always, I mean, we had a few, but they at one point or another had always interacted with us in person.
Right.
So I had to make that leap over.
Oh, wow. So how was it like when you first started transitioning? Was it easier or harder than you thought it was going to be?
For me, it was easier.
Okay.
What I realized is I actually prefer to run a business online. It's like you don't know, and because I had always done it in person, I'd always been a networker and all this, you know, going out to a million coffees and lunches and dinners. And what I learned when I started going online is how much that exhausted me.
Wow.
That I pick up so much from people and their energy that having that close proximity was actually hard on me. And once I started working with people through Zoom and through email and through this sort of thing, I had a lot more energy and I didn't feel so drained by the work. So for me, it was easier. But what I met from a lot of clients was resistance. I mean, I had some people, they absolutely would not turn this Zoom thing on. They didn't want to do it. It was just like, no. I mean, I had some people tell me, I joined a mastermind because I wanted to meet with people in the same room and locally, and I'm not doing that, right? Even I had a group that I had to finish up the final weeks when I was in San Carlos, Mexico, and they were in Tucson. And I mean, the last few weeks were the most uncomfortable situation you could imagine, because I turned the Zoom on and it's kind of like, I'm not happy to be doing this. I am forced to be meeting through Zoom for these final weeks, and I'm going to do it because, you know, like they had paid for it, but they were just pissed off about it, you know? And it actually, you know, it was kind of like, sometimes it'd make me laugh because it almost felt like I was observing toddler behavior from people. But also it was so clarifying because I could see these are not my ideal clients. If somebody has that big of a hang up of meeting like this,
Right.
it's probably time for us to part ways, you know?
Right. I think it's awesome that you were able to read that so quickly and then turn the tables and flip the switch or whatever and make that decision. Okay, this is how it needs to be done.
You know, I think being in Mexico made it easier for me. We have a lower cost of living. It's a more relaxed lifestyle. And I had the confidence and the joy of travel. So it made it easier for me to say, you know what, if I have to wad this whole thing up and throw it away and start over, so be it, you know?
Wow, that's awesome. So, okay, you wrote an article, I think it was in Life Grid, called Travel is My Spiritual Journey. So how does your spiritual practice, aka your freedom to travel and be you, affect your business and your life?
The way it affects my business most, and thankfully I can answer this in reality and not theory, is it booms my business. Funny enough, I make more money when I'm traveling with a lot less work and a lot more ease than I ever did in the US. Like we hit six figures the first year in our business, but let me tell you, I earned every one of those dollars. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was a lot of work. I mean, I was working the day and the week and the meeting and everything. I mean,
Wow.
and so it's just, I experienced a lot more abundance in my life and with a lot less work. I work about 3 hours a day. And that was not the case when we had our business in San Diego. And we were, hitting those good numbers. And then my life really, like I said, it affects my health hugely. I'm in good health. I sleep well. I take naps. And honestly, too, it's the relationships with Derek and the boys. I have a much better relationship with Derek because I'm not always in fifth gear. Derek is a very relaxed, laid back, steady Eddie. He's like just so grounded. And so in the US, when I'm like, always like, psh, when I'm in the US, we call it Monica mode. Like, I'm just like, out of my way. You know what I mean? Like, I got stuff to do. You can go over there. And
Right.
And it just like rattles him, And so the other day he told me, I like Mexico, Monique. I like Mexico, Monique, And same thing with the boys, because let me tell you, having two toddlers, sometimes they can get the best of me,
Yeah.
But they don't get me as much as I know if I was in that mode of the United States.
Oh, I totally get that, because I think sometimes it's so hard to switch back and forth. And I think goes back to what you were talking about earlier. It's like your kids are compartmentalized. They're not like a full part of your life. They're just one part. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
So when you're not in, like you said, fifth gear all the time, that allows them to kind of flow with you instead of trying to keep up with you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't feel like, I'm sort of kicking people and swatting at people as I'm spinning, It's
right.
Just, okay, we can move from one thing to the next and nobody's getting hurt in the process,
Exactly. So what was the one thing, or if you can pinpoint one thing that was holding you back from your dream?
What was holding me back from my dream was coming out and saying, I'm a world traveler. I'm not just someone who likes travel or like who had fun when I traveled in my 20s or who would like to go on vacation a couple times a year. Like, I had to announce this is who I am. And part of what's hard about that, I think, as an American, is we're raised to believe that the United States is the greatest country in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, we should be grateful, like, that we were born there. We got that blue passport and everybody else wants to come where we are. And so it's kind of hard to be like, I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want this life. It's not my dream. The American dream is definitely not my dream.
Right.
So to break out of that, it almost seems disrespectful. It seems unpatriotic. It seems ungrateful.
Right.
Some people are sitting here going, you live in Mexico? Like, are you crazy?
Exactly.
Because they buy into everything the media says, right? So they think like, this is a true story. I recently had this interview published on International Living, and a man put in the comments, it doesn't really matter how cheap the cost of living is because your life's in danger every single day when you're living in that country. And I thought, oh my God. But that's what people really believe.
Wow.
That is what's ingrained in us, is that it's safe in the US. And if you live anywhere else, it's incredibly dangerous and it's risky. And so coming out, I had to approach all of those mindsets,
Wow. So how did you give yourself the courage to do that, knowing what was coming for you?
Honestly, this is what I said. I'm gonna make the announcement and I'm gonna run across the border. And once I'm there and I'm happy and I'm living the good life, right? The joke's really on them. I won't care as much what they think.
Right.
Having the distance helps.
That makes sense. That makes sense because you're not right there in the midst of it all the time. Like,
yeah, I'm not at dinner going back and forth with Aunt whoever who thinks I'm crazy. It's like, I didn't answer that phone call. Let that one go to voicemail. So.
Okay, so what's the best advice that you've ever received?
I think the best advice I've ever received is from Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks. She said once that you have to be selfish enough
Hmm.
to live a good life. You know, you have to be
Yes.
selfish enough to decide what you want and to go for it. And I think women especially, we're so afraid of being labeled as selfish. Like, call me anything, but I'm not going to be selfish, right? And I'll tell you right now, I'm selfish. I am
Love
absolutely,
it.
and I have found that that's the key to everything.
Wow. I think that people don't realize that selfish is the point where you find true security, because you're taken care of, and it takes care, it resonates with everybody else that's in your life.
It's absolutely the truth, because the moment I felt like I can speak up and say what's making me happy and what I need and what I want,
Mm-hmm.
that freed my husband up, because it's hard for men to try to read women's minds. It's not their superpower, right? And then also with my kids, I can be very clear, like, nope, mama don't want to do that right now. I want to relax, like, and I'm straight with my kids even from this age, like, it's time, mama's going to go do yoga, or mama's going to go relax, or mama's going to close this door and I'm going to go cook, and I don't want you coming in here, like, and they have been my biggest test for boundaries. But it's true. It's like, you have to be able to voice that. And once you do, everyone else knows where they land, and everybody can feel good about that.
Right. And I think that's one thing that people are afraid of, is stepping on somebody else's toes. And it's like, sometimes you just have to, in order to get what you need.
Absolutely. And I think far too many women aren't getting what they need. And guess what happens? There is so much pain, so much suffering, so much resentment, so much anger that comes as a result. I found stepping on a toe is like really easy to deal with in comparison to all that other stuff.
Exactly. So what's one habit that you have that contributes to your success?
One habit. Well, I will tell you, if I had to say one word, is I'm incredibly disciplined. And I think that most people really don't like that word. They don't like, and what I mean by that is, like, I make my list, I get up, I get ready, I get work done, I do yoga, I do meditation, I go for a walk. I know the things that make me feel good, and I make sure I do them. I know the things that make me money in business, so I make sure I do them. And I think that that is the secret to my success, is I just don't make things complicated. It's just like, okay, that's simple. Like, I'm stressed out. Okay, you're stressed out. Yoga de-stresses you. Go do yoga. You want to make some more money? Okay, we'll go blog, go do a video, go start a program. I think my habit is just allowing things to be this as simple as they are.
Okay, I like that. So you do yoga and meditation, and then you have 2 toddlers, and you're married, and you have this business that has all of these programs. How do you find the time to make sure that you do what you need to do for you?
I have to tell you, I have a huge advantage living in Mexico, okay, because I only work 3 hours a day. I work when the boys are napping, and it's super concentrated. And the way I get a lot done in a short amount of time is I eliminate distractions.
Okay.
So I'm not doing anything else during those 3 hours except for working, doing the things that I know make me money. And then outside of that, like, I actually did some yoga this morning. And it's just being able, I think the biggest thing, I have fallen into it before, and I think a lot of women do, it's like, well, if I can't carve out time to go to an hour yoga class, then I guess I can't do yoga, right?
Right.
Whereas what I've learned is, if I can take 15 minutes in that little room where the boys are having breakfast with Derek, or, watching Sesame Street, if I can go do 15 minutes of a couple sun salutations, that can set the rest of my day.
Oh, so you're not limited to that.
Yeah.
Yoga.
Yeah. So it may not, be what you think of, but it's just being able to, well, can I put a slice of it in my day?
Okay. I like that. So you just take little pieces.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I know a lot of women struggle with, like you said, there's this, and this to do. And if the yoga class takes an hour, then it's just not going to happen. So for you to say, just take a slice of it, or 15 minutes over here, it's like, how are they going to do that? You know what I mean? It's like, you have to make that decision that this is what you need for you.
Yeah, and I just want to say this because I think that this needs to be said out loud. A lot of women do not have enough conversations with their spouses or partners about what needs to happen in this partnership. Right?
Yeah.
And that is what leads to a lot of women who are frazzled and frustrated. Because, like, for example, when we lived in Tucson, there was a Sunday morning yoga class. And it was right by our house. And so I had this conversation with Derek, like, we're gonna have breakfast. I'm gonna get the boys ready for the nap. You're gonna nap them, and I'm gonna go to yoga. This is the Sunday practice, right? Because I really needed that Sunday yoga. I don't think enough women do that. They go, well, he didn't volunteer to watch the kids while I get me time. And so then they're just ticked off, right? And the man's clueless. And then all this stuff's flying through the air and the kids can feel it. Instead of just saying, listen, I need this hour every week or this hour every day. Like, I think being able to just say that. And I think what we have to get out of this mindset of as women is that it's our responsibility to take care of the kids, to run the business, to cook the meals, to grocery shop, to pick up the dry cleaning. Stop it. Like, redefine it and say, this, could you handle these ones and I'll handle these ones, and, have the conversation.
Wow. I think you just stepped on a whole lot of toes right there.
Don't be a single married mom, okay? Don't do it.
Yeah, that's a difficult one, let me tell you. So what is your parting piece of guidance for everybody?
If I had to give one piece of guidance, whether it's to someone who wants to travel more or to that person who maybe what their dream is a little bit unconventional, is I would encourage you to get out of theory and just get into action. In theory and in our heads, things are a lot bigger, a lot harder, and a lot more complex than they usually are, right? So find one big, makes you kind of hold your breath for a second, exciting thing that you can do, and then let the dominoes fall. Let it open it up and let it show you what needs to happen next, and get into action. And once you get into action, you can get out of theory and you can get out of overwhelm, and you can really gain a lot of confidence from moving at least one step forward for whatever it is you want in your life.
That's awesome. Confidence comes from action. I like that.
Yes.
So what's the best way for people to connect with you?
They can find me on Facebook or Instagram, Monique Alvarez Enterprises on Facebook, and that's also the name of my website. And then on Instagram, I'm Miss Monique Alvarez. I exclusively post on my travel photos on Instagram, but I'm going to be doing a 30-day live stream challenge on Facebook, so they can find me there. And I also have a group for anyone who loves travel and wants to do more of it, and it's called World Lovers. It's Time to Travel.
Oh, I love that. So we're going to have links to everything underneath your video so people can connect with you. And I want to thank you so much again for being here with me today and for having this conversation with me. And I hope that everybody got what they needed from it.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.